Good evening. My name is Kacper Paradowski and you are watching Poland Daily News. The cabinet of the council took the place today and was chaired by President Andrzej Duda. The main topic of the meeting of the head of state and ministers was Poland's epidemiological situation and its impact on the country's economy.
By September 3rd, 69,000 cases of COVID-19 were reported in Poland. 47% of them were women. Among all the infected, 7.6% were children. This is extremely important because it allowed us to make a rational decision about children returning to school. Most cases were reported in Silesia, that is 21,000, but for the last 2 weeks the situation in Silesia has been stable and the number of active cases is regularly decreasing. There were 2,092 deaths, 46% of them were women. The youngest death was that of an 18-year-old, the oldest 99. The average age of those who died was 75.7. No deaths among children have been reported.
Dzisiaj można powiedzieć w absolutnej większości.
In the absolute majority of schools in our country, learning is taking place as planned. Several precautions have been implemented. 59 schools throughout Poland are closed, but 99% of the schools are functioning as normal.
99% szkół funkcjonuje. Jeżeli chodzi, proszę Państwa, o charakter...
As far as the nature of the epidemic is concerned, as reported by the Ministry of Health and the Chief Sanitary Inspector, it has had a focal character in our country for some time now. Outbreaks appear mainly in two places, in workplaces and weddings. Unfortunately, many people get infected at weddings and family meetings. Therefore, we ask you to be extra careful in this respect and, above all, try to adhere to social distancing. Use masks. Masks and social distancing are measures that greatly protect against the spread of the virus.
According to the Ministry of Health, one of the main sources of coronavirus outbreaks are wedding receptions. Waldemar Kraska, the Deputy Minister of Health, announced today that his department is considering introducing restrictions on their organization.
We have heard signals from several European countries, as well as from Israel, that they implemented either a total ban on organizing wedding receptions or there are significant restrictions on the number of guests. In a moment, there is a meeting of the crisis management team where I will raise this issue. There is no decision at the moment, although I will continue to call for us to keep the sanitary guidelines that are recommended by the Chief Sanitary Inspectorate at these large family events.
After a few months of break, students have finally returned to schools. It seems that both the teachers and the students are very happy to be together after months of quarantine.
In most schools, students must disinfect their hands before entering. They also must have their temperature measured. According to school principals, the guidelines of the Ministry of Education were quite general and therefore flexible, which made it easy for each school to adapt.
After a week in school, we can say that nothing bad has happened and that the words of the Minister of Education, who said that children are not the most at risk when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic, were true. Students complied with the recommendations of the Ministry of Health, including hand disinfection, social distancing, and so on. Every class has its own classroom. If the weather is good, we usually go outside.
Students must wear face masks in the common areas, but not during lessons. The priority for the students is to wash their hands and avoid touching their faces. In most schools, parents cannot enter the school building. The most difficult situation is in the after-school club. It is very difficult to keep each class separated because they cannot have any contact with each other.
There is no ideal way to separate students from different classes, but the groups are divided up by age, so we know which student goes to which class and whom he had contact with.
Schools had to adapt their functioning to the new coronavirus reality, which might cause problems for many parents.
Teraz trzeba przyjść na 8:50.
Our lessons used to begin at 8 a.m. Now they begin at 8:50. It is very problematic for some parents.
I takich różnych obostrzeń jest bardzo dużo.
According to the Minister of Education, the majority of schools in Poland work in stationary mode. Over 50 schools were closed in the first week of the 2020-2021 academic year. This year, over 3 million students attend elementary schools in Poland.
Less than 2 months are left until the US presidential election. Joe Biden, the Democratic Party's presidential candidate, met with the family of the late Jacob Blake in Kenosha, who was shot by a police officer during an intervention. Donald Trump, in turn, visited Pennsylvania. The president accused the Democrats of playing a cynical game using the coronavirus pandemic.
During his speech at an election rally in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump accused the Democrats of artificially upholding the restrictions introduced in connection with the coronavirus for political reasons.
For the entire summer, Biden was silent as far-left rioters viciously attacked law enforcement in Democrat-run cities hall, burned down businesses, terrorized civilians, and just recently marched through the streets chanting "Death to America." This is what we have, death to America.
The media report that over 300 New York City restaurant owners filed a class action lawsuit demanding compensation of $2 billion from the metropolitan authorities for the losses they suffered due to restrictions imposed by the Democratic Party mayor. Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, expressed his solidarity with the protesting restaurant owners.
I have no legal authority to make that decision. The state will make that decision. I happen to agree with the speaker. I'd like to see the restaurants open. However, there's a but, B-U-T. The but is our rules and guidance on reopening is only as good as the compliance and the enforcement.
Donald Trump also announced the introduction of a COVID-19 vaccine to the market in November.
The stock market's at record levels. Think of it. In the hopefully rounding the turn on the pandemic, we're rounding that turn, and vaccines are coming along great. You know that the job that they've done, the doctors, everybody else, we're years ahead of schedule. Anybody else as president, you wouldn't be talking about vaccines for 2 or 3 years.
The U.S. presidential elections are to take place on November 3rd.
That is all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for Poland Daily Business. Good night.